Fleet Commander Vex-9 stared at the tactical display with all 4 of his eyes. The numbers weren't making sense, not even close. "Run the scan again," he barked at his sensor operator, Lieutenant Crix. "There has to be an error." Crix's tentacles danced across the console with practiced precision. The results came back identical. "Sir, I've run it 12 times. The readings are consistent." "Consistent?" Vex-9's voice cracked like a whip. "You're telling me that the humans, those stubborn, backwards primates, sent exactly 1 ship to face our entire battle fleet?" "That appears to be correct, sir." The bridge of the Kalaxian dreadnought Eternal Vengeance fell silent. 47 crew members, representing the finest military minds of the Galactic Coalition, stared at their instruments in bewilderment. Outside the massive viewport, the human vessel hung in space like a metal splinter against the stars. It wasn't even that big. Commander Thane 5, Vex-9's second in command, cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, perhaps it's a scout ship. Maybe they're buying time while their main fleet approaches." "A scout ship," Vex-9 repeated slowly. "A scout ship that just transmitted an unconditional surrender demand to our entire armada." "Well, yes, sir." Vex-9 turned to face his tactical officer. "Remind me, Sub-Commander Clix, how many ships do we have in this battle group?" Clix consulted his display. 847 vessels, sir, including 12 dreadnoughts, 31 heavy cruisers, and 4 planet crackers. And the humans sent how many ships to oppose us? 1, sir. 1 ship. Vex-9's laugh held no humor. Either the humans have completely lost their minds or... He paused, his expression growing thoughtful. "Or we're about to learn something very unpleasant about human military doctrine." Lieutenant Crix's sensor board erupted in soft chimes. "Sir, the human vessel is powering up its weapon systems." "What type of weapons?" Vex-9 demanded. "I'm not sure, sir. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases." Sub-Commander Clix frowned at his tactical display. "Sir, that ship is barely the size of one of our destroyers. What could it possibly do against a fleet this size?" "That," Vex-9 muttered, "is exactly what I'm afraid to find out." On the communications console, the human surrender demand was still blinking. Vex-9 read it again, searching for some hint of sanity. "To the Kalaxian fleet. You have entered human space without authorization. You have 47 minutes to reverse course and depart. Failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your invasion force. This is your only warning. Captain Maria Santos, UES Prometheus." "Complete destruction," Vex-9 read aloud. "1 ship threatens to completely destroy 847 vessels." He looked around the bridge. "Does anyone else see the fundamental mathematical impossibility here?" Silence. "Sir," came a hesitant voice from the communications station. "There's something else. The human ship. It's broadcasting on all frequencies, not just to us." "What do you mean?" "They're transmitting to every inhabited system within 50 light years. It's like they want everyone to watch." Vex-9 felt a cold chill run down his spine. In his 40 years of military service, he'd learned to recognize certain patterns. And this pattern, this felt like a setup. "Open a channel to the human vessel," he ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a human female. She appeared young by human standards, probably no more than 35 solar cycles. Her dark hair was pulled back in a regulation military style, and her brown eyes held an unsettling confidence. "I am Fleet Commander Vex-9 of the Kalaxian 3rd Battle Fleet," he announced formally. "I assume you are Captain Santos." "That's correct." Her voice was steady, almost casual. "I take it you received our message." "I did, and I must say, Captain, either your species has developed a remarkable sense of humor, or you've made a catastrophic error in judgment." Captain Santos smiled. Not the nervous smile of someone facing impossible odds. Not the desperate grin of someone bluffing. This was the smile of someone who knew something you didn't. "No error, Commander. Just following standard protocol." "Standard protocol?" Vex-9 couldn't hide his incredulity. "Captain, Perhaps your instruments are malfunctioning. You are facing nearly 900 ships with a single vessel. I'm aware of the numbers. Then surely you understand the futility of your position. Captain Santos leaned back in her command chair. Commander, may I ask you a question? I suppose, in all your military experience, have you ever encountered a situation where someone was so completely, obviously, mathematically outgunned, and yet still issued surrender demands with complete confidence? Vex-9 opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. Actually, now that she mentioned it, because in my experience, Santos continued, when someone acts like they have a winning hand despite appearing to hold nothing but low cards, they usually know something you don't. On the tactical display, the human ship began to move. Not quickly, not aggressively. It simply repositioned itself, like a chess piece moving into a carefully planned location. Sub-Commander Clicks studied his instruments. Sir, they're moving to coordinates 347.2 by 891.7. Why those coordinates? Vex-9 wondered aloud. Unknown, sir. There's nothing special about that position. It's just empty space. Captain Santos was still smiling on the communication channel. Commander, you have 38 minutes remaining. Captain, I admire your courage, but please be reasonable. Look at your situation. I am looking at my situation. Are you looking at yours? What is that supposed to mean? Instead of answering directly, Santos asked another question. Commander, what do you know about human ship classification? Vex-9 exchanged glances with his officers. I know you have various classes. Destroyers, cruisers, the usual categories. And what class would you say the Prometheus is? Vex-9 looked at his tactical display. Based on its size and configuration, I would classify it as a light destroyer, possibly a heavy frigate. Interesting guess. Santos's smile widened. Would you like to know what it actually is? Something in her tone made Vex-9's stomachs clench. Very well. The Prometheus is what we call a Scorched Earth class vessel. Silence on the bridge. I'm not familiar with that classification, Vex-9 admitted. No, you wouldn't be. We don't advertise their existence. Scorched Earth class ships serve a very specific purpose in human military doctrine, which is total area denial. Lieutenant Crix looked up from his sensor station, confusion written across his features. Sir, the human ship. Its energy output just increased by 4,000%. 4,000%? Vex-9 spun toward the tactical display. That's impossible. A ship that size doesn't have the power generation capacity for... He stopped. The human ship was glowing. Actually glowing. A soft blue-white radiance was emanating from its hull, growing brighter by the second. And the energy readings. They were climbing beyond anything in Kalaxian databases. Captain Santos, Vex-9 said carefully, what exactly is your ship doing? Following standard Scorched Earth Protocol. You see, Commander, when humans establish territorial boundaries, we take them very seriously. When those boundaries are crossed by hostile forces, the glow around the Prometheus intensified. We implement what we call the Broken Glass Doctrine. The Broken Glass Doctrine? It's simple, really. If we can't have something, nobody can have it. Vex-9's tactical officer suddenly went rigid. Sir, energy cascade detected. The human ship. It's not just powering weapons. It's what? Sir, I think they're initiating some kind of chain reaction. On the communication screen, Captain Santos checked something off camera. 22 minutes remaining, Commander. Captain, what have you done? Nothing yet. But in 22 minutes, the Prometheus will detonate its quantum cascade engine. It's what? Think of it as a very large bomb, Commander. Large enough to create a temporary black hole approximately 1,500 kilometers in diameter. The bridge of the Eternal Vengeance erupted in panicked chatter. Vex-9 silenced it with a gesture, but his own voice was strained when he spoke. Captain, surely you're not serious. You would destroy your own ship, your own crew. That's what volunteers are for, Commander. This is madness. This is human military doctrine. We established these territorial boundaries for a reason, cross them uninvited, and we implement total area denial. No exceptions. Sub-Commander Klix was frantically working his console. Sir, I'm running calculations on the Cascade effect. If she's telling the truth about the range, and every ship in the fleet would be caught in the event horizon. Vex-9 stared at the tactical display. 847 ships, representing the combined might of 3 Kalaxian worlds, all facing destruction because one small human vessel was apparently carrying a doomsday device. Captain Santos, even if you destroy our fleet, you understand this means war? Total war between our species? Actually, no. Santos consulted her instruments again. According to our intelligence, this represents roughly 60% of your total military capacity. After we eliminate this fleet, you'll be in no position to wage war against anyone. You've planned this. Of course we've planned this. Did you think humans established military boundaries without having a way to enforce them? Lieutenant Krix's voice was barely a whisper. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting similar energy signatures. Where? Everywhere, sir. I'm reading identical Cascade signatures at the edge of every human territorial boundary, dozens of them. Vex-9 felt his legs give out. He slumped into his command chair as the implications hit him. You've positioned doomsday devices at every entry point to human space. Scorched Earth class vessels, yes. Automated systems, mostly, though some, like the Prometheus, are crewed for diplomatic purposes. Diplomatic purposes? Someone has to deliver the surrender demand. The absurdity of the situation was almost overwhelming. Vex-9 looked at his fleet display, then at the single human ship, then at Captain Santos's calm expression. 17 minutes, Commander. Captain, surely there must be some room for negotiation. Certainly, reverse course immediately and depart human space. Your ships will not be pursued or harassed. You have my word on that. And if we refuse, then in 17 minutes, there won't be enough left of your fleet to fill a cargo container. Sub-Commander Klix leaned toward Vex-9. Sir, perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal. We could regroup, develop countermeasures. Countermeasures against a black hole. Vex-9's laugh was bitter. What countermeasures exist against the fundamental forces of physics? Captain Santos seemed to hear him. That's the point, Commander. Some weapons can be countered, avoided, or defended against. Physics is absolute. You're all insane. We're all human. Sometimes the difference is academic. Vex-9 stared at the countdown timer on his tactical display. 15 minutes and 37 seconds until... What? Until 847 ships and their crews were compressed into a point of infinite density. Sir, came a voice from the communications station. We're receiving emergency transmissions from several ships in the fleet. They're requesting permission to withdraw. Denied, Vex-9 snapped automatically, then paused. Actually, relay this conversation to all ship commanders. Let them make their own decisions. Within minutes, nearly a quarter of the fleet was peeling away from the formation. Vex-9 couldn't blame them. The mathematics of the situation were undeniable. Captain Santos, you realize you're committing suicide along with us. That's the job, Commander. Some things are worth dying for. Territorial sovereignty happens to be one of them. Even if it means mutual destruction. Especially if it means mutual destruction, that's how you establish credible deterrent. Vex-9 looked around his bridge. His crew was watching him, waiting for orders. 847 ships, thousands of lives, all hanging in the balance because the humans had decided to weaponize physics itself. 13 minutes, Commander. The tactical display showed more ships departing the formation. The human strategy was working perfectly. Face an enemy with an impossible choice. Accept total destruction or retreat and lose face. But there was a third option. Captain Santos, what if I ordered an immediate attack on your vessel? You could try, but the Cascade is already in motion. Destroying the Prometheus at this point would simply cause the detonation to occur immediately rather than in... She checked her chronometer. 12 minutes and 15 seconds. So we're trapped. You're trapped by your own decisions, Commander. You chose to invade human space. You chose to ignore our warnings. You chose to bring a war fleet into territory we've clearly marked as protected. And now you're choosing to destroy us all. No, Commander, I'm choosing to defend human territory. The destruction is simply a consequence of your choices. Vex-9 closed his eyes. In his military academy training, they had covered dozens of scenarios involving superior enemy forces. But none of those scenarios had involved an enemy willing to commit suicide to achieve their objectives. "Sir," Sub-Commander Klix whispered urgently, "perhaps we should. I know what we should do." Vex-9 interrupted. "The question is whether I can live with doing it." On the screen, Captain Santos was waiting patiently. No taunts, no gloating. Just the quiet confidence of someone who had already accepted the consequences of their actions. 10 minutes, Commander. All ships, this is Fleet Commander Vex-9, he announced over the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice carried the weight of defeat, but also something else. Relief, perhaps. Begin immediate withdrawal from human space. Full reverse, maximum velocity. The response was instantaneous. Ships throughout the massive formation began turning away from the human boundary, their engines flaring to life like scattered stars fleeing the dawn. "A wise choice, Commander," Captain Santos said from the screen, "though I have to admit, I'm slightly disappointed." "Disappointed?" Vex-9 couldn't hide his surprise. "You wanted us to stay and die." "Not at all, but I was curious how long Kalaxian pride would wrestle with Kalaxian survival instincts. 8 minutes and 43 seconds, apparently." Santos actually laughed at that. "Not bad. We had a betting pool going. Most of my crew thought you'd break at the 5-minute mark." "Your crew was betting on whether we'd choose death or retreat." "Commander, when you're sitting on top of a bomb that could turn you into subatomic particles, you tend to develop a dark sense of humor pretty quickly." Vex-9 watched his tactical display as the last of his ships cleared the human boundary zone. The retreat was proceeding smoothly, but something still bothered him about the entire situation. "Captain Santos, may I ask you something?" "Certainly." "This entire scenario, the single ship, the impossible weapon, the countdown timer, it feels almost theatrical." Santos tilted her head. "Theatrical?" As if it were designed not just to repel invaders, but to send a message. A very specific message. And what message would that be? That humans don't just defend their territory. You make the act of crossing your boundaries so terrifying, so absolute in its consequences, that no one will ever want to try it again. Captain Santos was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice had lost some of its casual tone. "You're more perceptive than most, Commander." "So, I'm right? This is all psychological warfare?" "Not all of it. The Prometheus really is carrying a quantum Cascade device. I really will detonate it if necessary. But yes, the single ship approach is partially about message management." Vex-9 leaned forward in his command chair. "Explain." "Think about it from a strategic perspective. We could have met your fleet with an equal force. Ship-to-ship combat, traditional warfare. Some of you would have died, some of us would have died, and in the end, maybe we'd have won. Maybe you'd have won." "That sounds like normal military engagement." "Exactly, normal, predictable, something that could be planned for, countered, potentially defeated with better tactics or superior numbers." The tactical display showed his fleet now completely clear of human space. The Prometheus was powering down its Cascade device, the ominous blue glow fading from its hull. "But this approach," Santos continued, "this sends a different message entirely, which is that humans don't play by normal military rules, that we're willing to accept any cost, including our own destruction, to defend what's ours, that we've weaponized physics itself and positioned those weapons at every possible entry point." Sub-Commander Klix looked up from his station. "Sir, sensors confirm the Cascade device is shutting down safely." Vex-9 nodded, but kept his attention on Captain Santos. "So you're saying the entire point was to make us afraid?" "Not afraid, Commander. Respectful. There's a difference." "Is there?" Fear makes people desperate. Desperate people do stupid things, like developing superweapons or forming alliances specifically to counter your defenses. Respect, on the other hand, makes people cautious. It makes them think twice before testing boundaries. Lieutenant Crix was monitoring long-range communications. "Sir, we're receiving reports from other fleets. Similar encounters are happening at human boundary zones across this entire sector." "How many other fleets?" 17, sir, all retreating." Vex-9 felt a mixture of relief and humiliation. His wasn't the only invasion force to be turned back by a single human ship. Somehow, that made it worse. "Captain Santos, how many of these Scorched Earth vessels do you actually have?" "Classified information, Commander." "More than 17. Much more. Enough to cover every potential entry point to human space." Santos smiled again. "What do you think?" The implications were staggering. Humans hadn't just built a few doomsday devices. They'd apparently constructed an entire network of them, creating a defensive perimeter that was mathematically impossible to breach without accepting total annihilation. "Commander," came a voice from the communications station, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Kalaxian High Command." On screen, the image of Admiral Zorthak appeared, his usually composed features showing clear signs of stress. "Vex-9, report your status immediately." "Admiral, the 3rd Battle Fleet is withdrawing from human space as ordered." "As ordered?" "I gave no such order." "Sir, with respect, the tactical situation made withdrawal the only viable option." "Explain." Vex-9 glanced at Captain Santos, who was still listening to the conversation. "Admiral, perhaps this discussion should be private." "Nonsense. Let the humans hear this. They'll learn soon enough that the Calaxian Empire doesn't retreat from a single enemy vessel." Captain Santos raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Admiral," Vex-9 began carefully, "the humans deployed a weapon system unlike anything in our experience. They threatened to create a localized black hole that would have destroyed our entire fleet. Impossible." "Sir, I have detailed sensor readings. The energy signatures were consistent with quantum Cascade technology." Admiral Zorthak's expression grew thunderous. "Commander, are you telling me that you retreated an 800-ship battle fleet because of threats from one human vessel?" "Sir, I'm telling you that I preserved 800 ships and their crews by making the only logical decision available. The only logical decision would have been to destroy that ship and continue the invasion." From the corner of his eye, Vex-9 saw Captain Santos shake her head slightly. When she spoke, her voice was calm, but carried easily across the bridge. "Admiral, with respect, your commander made the correct choice. Attacking the Prometheus after Cascade initiation would have simply triggered immediate detonation." Admiral Zorthak's attention snapped to the human captain. "And you are?" "Captain Maria Santos, UES Prometheus." The officer who just prevented a rather spectacular military disaster. "You prevented nothing. You delayed the inevitable." "Did I?" Santos consulted something off-screen. "Admiral, how many invasion fleets did you launch today?" "That information is classified." 17 fleets, comprising approximately 14,000 ships and roughly 2 million personnel. All turned back by single human vessels, all facing identical weapon systems, all given identical warnings. The silence on Admiral Zorthak's end stretched for several seconds. "Impossible," he repeated, but with less conviction. "Admiral," Santos continued, "let me explain something about human military doctrine that might save us all considerable trouble. When we establish territorial boundaries, we don't do it lightly. We don't draw lines on star charts as political gestures." "Then why do you do it?" "Because we intend to hold those boundaries absolutely. No exceptions, no negotiations, no compromises. Cross them uninvited, and you face total elimination. Not defeat, elimination." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Santos's expression hardened. "Admiral, in the past 4 hours, your empire has launched the largest military operation in galactic history. 17 separate invasion forces, targeting human colonies across 3 sectors." Admiral Zorthak said nothing. And in those same 4 hours, 17 human vessels have turned back all 17 invasions without firing a single shot. Not through superior firepower, not through tactical brilliance, but through absolute commitment to territorial defense. What are you saying? I'm saying that humans don't bluff about things like this, Admiral. When we say we'll destroy everything rather than let you take it, we mean it literally. Vex-9 watched the exchange with growing understanding. This wasn't just about defending territory. This was about establishing a new paradigm for galactic politics. Admiral, he interjected, perhaps we should consider the broader implications of this situation. What implications? Sir, if the humans have truly positioned these weapons at every entry point to their territory, then invasion becomes not just difficult, but mathematically impossible. Any attacking force would be trading certain destruction for uncertain victory. Admiral Zorthak glared at the screen. Are you suggesting we simply accept human territorial claims without challenge? I'm suggesting we recognize that humans have made challenging those claims prohibitively expensive. Captain Santos nodded approvingly. Your commander understands the situation correctly, Admiral. We're not interested in conquest or expansion. We simply want to be left alone to develop our civilization in peace. And if we refuse? Then you'll discover that humans are very serious about the phrase mutual assured destruction. Lieutenant Crix looked up from his sensor station. Sir, I'm detecting something interesting. Long-range scans are showing massive energy buildups at human military installations throughout their territory. What kind of energy buildups? It looks like they're powering up their entire defensive network. Every Scorched Earth vessel, every orbital defense platform, every. He paused, checking his readings twice. Sir, they appear to be preparing for total war. Captain Santos sighed. Unfortunately, your invasion attempt has triggered our Fortress Protocol. Until the threat level returns to normal, all human defensive systems remain at maximum readiness. Fortress Protocol? Admiral Zorthak demanded. Think of it as turning our entire territory into a single, massive weapon system. Every human world, every space station, every colony ship becomes part of an integrated defense network. That's impossible. The coordination required alone. Admiral, you launched simultaneous attacks on 17 different targets. Did you think humans couldn't coordinate a response of equal scope? Vex-9 studied his tactical displays. The energy readings from human space were unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was as if an entire civilization had suddenly transformed itself into a weapon. Captain Santos, he said slowly, what would it take to de-escalate this situation? Simple. Formal recognition of human territorial boundaries by the Kalaxian Empire, a non-aggression treaty, and withdrawal of all military assets from the boundary zones. And, in return, we power down the Fortress Protocol and go back to peaceful development. Admiral Zorthak's image flickered with rage. The Kalaxian Empire does not negotiate with inferior species. Admiral, Santos replied calmly, after today, you might want to reconsider your definition of inferior. The communication channel went silent for a long moment. When Admiral Zorthak spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. I will need to consult with the High Council. Of course, take all the time you need. But, Admiral? What? While you're consulting, remember that humans have a saying. It's better to live to fight another day than to die for pride today. The transmission ended, leaving Vex-9's bridge in contemplative silence. Captain Santos, Vex-9 said finally, may I ask you one last question? Certainly. This entire defensive strategy, the Scorched Earth vessels, the Fortress Protocol, the willingness to accept mutual destruction, how long did it take humans to develop all of this? Santos smiled, but this time it was different. Sadder, perhaps. More reflective. Commander, humans have been preparing for this scenario since the day we first looked up at the stars and wondered what else might be out there. We've always known that someday, someone would try to take what we'd built. And you decided that if someone tried, you'd make sure there was nothing left to take. We decided that freedom isn't negotiable, that some things are worth any price, including extinction, even if it means destroying yourselves in the process. Especially if it means destroying ourselves in the process, because that's the only way to guarantee that the threat truly ends. Vex-9 looked around his bridge at his crew. Young officers who had families waiting at home. Veterans who had served the Empire faithfully for decades. All of them alive because one human captain had been willing to die to protect something she believed in. Captain Santos, I want you to know that I respect what you've done here today. Thank you, Commander. That means more than you might realize. Perhaps someday, when tensions have cooled, we might meet again under better circumstances. I'd like that. Humans aren't naturally warlike, despite appearances. We just take our independence very seriously. The communication channel closed, leaving Vex-9 alone with his thoughts as his fleet continued its withdrawal from human space. Behind them, the UES Prometheus maintained its position at the boundary, a single ship standing guard over an entire civilization's right to exist. In the days that followed, the Kalaxian High Council would vote unanimously to recognize human territorial claims and sign a comprehensive non-aggression treaty. Other galactic powers would quickly follow suit, having learned a valuable lesson about the dangers of threatening a species that had weaponized the very fabric of space-time itself. And in human space, the Fortress Protocol would be quietly deactivated, the Scorched Earth vessels returning to their patient vigil at the edge of known civilization. But the message had been sent and received across the galaxy. Humans would rather burn the universe down than live as slaves. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon in existence is simply the absolute certainty that someone is willing to use it. The galaxy was a much more careful place after that.